To start off, could you just introduce yourself, give a bit of background who you are and your role in the business world, and maybe an overview of what products you offered and some explanation of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Barrett McNabb, and I am a franchisee with the Joint Chiropractic in the medical space, in the chiropractic space. My background, I'm a retired Army officer. I spent the majority of my time as an infantry paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division, and I also became later on a foreign area officer. So I was stationed in U.S. embassies overseas, assisting the State Department and providing, military advice to the ambassador as well as foreign weapons sales. I ended my career as the branch chief of the Arabian Peninsula and Levant in the U.S.
Mm.
Army Central Command at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, and that's when I retired. I was able to retire early. I moved back to Houston, Texas, where I'm from, and I knew I wanted to be a small business owner. Now, one of the things that I didn't know was what I was going to do, and that's something that we talk about is what are your short, medium, long-term goals, and what do you want to do in business? And one of the things that I was trying to figure out, I'd invented a couple of things in the Army, and I was like, do I go into manufacturing? I don't know. Do I go into services? Do I go into consulting? And my wife, when I was in language school out at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, had gotten in a car accident, and she got a small settlement. But most importantly, she got 20 chiropractic visits, and she utilized those, and it helped her greatly with her care. Now, as I retired, she found the Joint Chiropractic in South Carolina, and the interesting thing about the Joint Chiropractic is that the medical records populate wherever you go. And so when we moved to Houston, her medical records automatically populate. They knew exactly what the chiropractor in South Carolina was doing. And I went in with her and I saw the simplicity of the model. There's a front desk associate that we call a wellness coordinator. And then there's the chiropractor. There's no goods or services, or sorry, there's no goods that are sold. So there's no product to keep on hand. It's just the manual adjustment. And so I asked my wife if this would be something that she'd be interested in doing and going into business, and she said yes. And so I pitched the idea to my mother and yanked her out of retirement. And so yeah, we own and operate 6 joint chiropractic clinics in Southeast Houston, in the Leak City, Pearland, Clear Lake, Kemah area, and it's been an absolutely wild ride. Now, one of the things was that I didn't have any business experience at all. And so
Mm.
it turns out my military operational planning experience overlaid very well with the business world. And so I was able to leverage those skills. And let me just give you a quick example. So in the military, we have something that's called the intelligence preparation of the battlefield, IPB. And you use it to find the enemy on the battlefield, to look and see and analyze how the enemy is going to react to your operations and how you can counteract those operations. And I'm going to briefly give you a quick overview, but it's 4 main processes. It's defining the operational environment, describing the battlefield's effects, identifying the threat, and determining the threat courses of action. And it's a circular process. You keep going. Just you don't do it just one time. So I found early on, if I replaced enemy in that process and replaced it with customer, because it turns out the customers don't like being called the enemy. So
Yeah, yeah.
but if I ran that process and I replaced enemy with customer and ran the same thing, I was able to identify not only where would be a good place to put real estate for my clinics to go into, but also where to identify and find where my customers are, so that I can get them into the clinic and grow my business. And so that's just an example of how yeah, utilizing military experience helped me in the business world.
That's very interesting, actually. I never considered that. I guess there'd be logistical overlap between those two areas. So yeah, that's very cool. So you sort of mentioned that you didn't have much experience with business or this area. So did you have any idea when you were younger, maybe in college, that you want to do something like this, or what did you perhaps study or pursue when you were about my age, so like 18, 17-ish?
Right. So when I graduated high school, I went to Kingwood High School, which is in North East Houston, and I went to Sam Houston State University in
Mm,
Huntsville, Texas. And
right.
I was honestly, I was a photography major. I
Ooh.
majored in photography. It was one of my favorite courses at Sam Houston was Introduction to the Visual Arts, and so I really was leaning into that. Now, what I also did is I made a mistake in signing up for
Mm.
classes my freshman year, and I signed up for what I thought was a business class, leadership and management techniques. And so I showed up to that class, and the professor came in with a flat top and a camouflage uniform and said, "Welcome to Leadership Management Techniques, Military Science 101, ROTC." And I was not the only one in the classroom that apparently had made that mistake. And so we're all looking around and like, I thought this was a business class.
Yeah.
And so we learned how to shake hands. And I remember that to this day, web to web contact, eye to eye contact. You're the most important person in the room at this point in time. Shake a woman's hand just as firm as you shake a man's hand. And that ingrained in me. And later on, there was a classmate of mine that was sitting in front of me, and he had a camouflage uniform on. And I said, "Hey, man, where'd you get that?" And he said, "Well, I joined an organization in ROTC called Ranger Company. We practice small infantry tactics on Thursdays. You ought to come check it out." And so I did, and looked at what everybody was doing, and they were doing movement formations and reacting to a notional enemy. And I thought it was really cool. So I said, "Sign me up." And they said, "Well, here's a rucksack." And I said, "Wow, it's really heavy." And they said, "Well, you'll get used to it." And honestly, I never did. Never did that, because every time you were used to it, they just add more stuff to the rucksack and make it heavier.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so I was a photography major, but as I went through ROTC, I realized that a career in the Army is awesome. It's going to be an amazing experience. But after I retire, what am I going to do? Be a photographer? And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to switch my major to criminal justice. And Sam Houston State University is one of the top tier criminal justice schools in the United States. And so
Mm.
I did have to stay an extra year because a lot of the photography credits didn't transfer over to criminal justice.
Right.
But I had a specialization of law enforcement and police science, and it turned out that was, a bonus later on. I was part of the initial invasion in Iraq, in Iraq
Ooh.
in 2003, and went to. By the time we got into Baghdad, we were now fixing things as opposed to blowing things up. Ambassador Brenner
Yeah.
said, "Hey, look, Army, you did a great job in blowing all this stuff up. But now we need you to fix everything." And so people, if the power plant, like who here has a degree in electrical engineering? And, people would raise their hand and okay, you're going to go fix the power plant. And so one of the things they needed to do was to fix and train the Baghdad police force. And so they said, "Who here has a criminal justice degree?" And I raised my hand. I have a degree in Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. And they said, "Okay, you're going to take charge of the Baghdad police force, and you're going to
Oh.
restructure that element." And I was a brand new promoted captain at the time, and they said, "You're gonna fix this." So I went in and I had a high level meeting with the chief of the Baghdad police force, and honestly, I didn't know what all the different rank structures were. In the police force here in the United States uses a lot of similar rank emblems that the military does, but all the different stars and half moons and things like that, I didn't know what they were. So I asked a loaded question. It wasn't meant to be this way, but I asked, "Who's in charge here?" And the room was silent. There's about 30 high level officials of the Baghdad police force, and the chief of police said, "You are." And I was like, "Whoa!" Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. And I realized, we had just taken down Saddam Hussein, so the police force was, used to having this blind loyalty and top-down driven leadership. And I said, "Whoa, whoa, no, I'm not in charge. I'm here to help you." And so the theories at the time that I had been taught, broken windows theory, community-based policing, getting out of your cars and actually walking amongst the population and building good relationships with that community-based policing is something that I was able to train the Baghdad police force to do, because previous to that they were operated on intimidation, was the
Mm.
main
Yeah.
the
Okay.
main way that they were looking at doing policing. So that's how a bug got put in my ear for working with foreign forces. I later became a military advisor in Afghanistan, and then that's why I transitioned over to being a foreign area officer. But it's interesting, the what you choose to study in college is not necessarily as important to what it's going to be successful later in life. The college is a rite of passage that shows that you're able to show up at the right place at the right time with the proper materials, being able to study information and regurgitate that information, and then provide analysis of that information on a repetitive basis across a number of disciplines. So, for instance, my criminal justice degree helped me in Baghdad just by random, but it doesn't necessarily apply to the business world. It's an accumulation of life skills. I think that's what's important in order to be a good business person. Now, don't get me wrong. Getting a business degree is going to give you a leg up. You're going to know all the different terms and terminology of what goes on in business, and it'll clearly set you up for success. But that's kind of how my path was.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of like college is more of a place to build like general skills, get to know some people instead of just fully focus. Well, while the degree is important, these are also other things we should be
Absolutely.
prioritizing. I see.
Absolutely.
Makes
What
yeah.
what it shows is it's proof that you were able to show up at the right place, the right time, in the right uniform, prepared, study, and be able to provide that information. I know there's a I've seen Generation Z TikToks and things like that where that people are trying to get a job and they're frustrated because they say you don't have any experience, and their response is, well, college. I have experience. College is my experience.
Mm.
College is training. That's not experience. And so there's a different level that employers are looking for, but it gives you the seeds of how to be successful. For example, Mark Zuckerberg, he didn't graduate. He went to Harvard, and he founded Facebook, and he dropped out. So he was able to parlay his technical expertise and things that he had learned in coding and things like that, and provide a great service.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so well, you have I guess a lot of experience, a lot of things you did. So I guess throughout these, do you have any interesting, memorable stories you'd perhaps be interested in sharing? Like a challenge that was like also a learning opportunity, or just something that was very unforgettable in your like business journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to do a military story and a business story
That's great. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they tie.
Of course. Makes
So
sense.
before 9/11 happened, I was an air assault rifle platoon leader stationed in Korea, in South Korea. And so I had 40 men under my command. By this time I'd gotten promoted to first lieutenant, and I loved my platoon. I loved maneuvering my platoon in the field. We got along great. So it was a combination of infantry soldiers. I had a medic. I had two field artillery soldiers that were forward observers that I could call artillery in, and I had a platoon sergeant as well. And so it was getting ready for me to time for me to be promoted and become the executive officer, second in command of the company. And so we got a new lieutenant in, and my company commander wanted the lieutenant to shadow me on my very last operation that I had with my platoon. And I said, sir, I really want to be with the boys and not, I just want to be my last mission and just me and the boys, and so I can have a good send off. And I really don't want this lieutenant to be, hanging around and have the soldiers looking over to him. Well, is he going to be in charge? Now when's that transition? So I just felt that it was going to be a little difficult. And the company commander said, no, I want this new lieutenant to see what right looks like, and this is going to be a training opportunity for this new second lieutenant. So I said, okay. And we had a mission in an area of South Korea called Twin Bridges. And we have crawled over that piece of terrain as the infantry for years and years and years. And there's a major terrain feature at a mountain called Manuel Bong. And so our mission was to climb this mountain. And then my specific platoon mission was to seize a road intersection um, and then allow a passage of lines through for the company to pass through me. So seize this road intersection, provide security, and then the company was going to pass through me and continue on operations. So we go climb this mountain. It was very difficult, took multiple hours to climb it, and then came down the mountain and seized my road intersection. And then all of a sudden I hear gunfire erupting very heavily on top of the mountain. Now, this is training, so we were shooting blanks at each other, and they have a little laser. It's called a mile system, and it's like laser tag, but for
Mm.
grown-ups.
Oh,
And so it has a blank, so but you can hear the gunshots. And so I get a call from the company commander that said, "Hey, Renegade Six, I need you to come back up the mountain and attack the enemy from this direction." And I said, "Roger that." And so I told the platoon, I said, "The company needs us. We have to climb the mountain again. Let's go." And so I turn around and I go back up this mountain, and we all climb back up the mountain. Except it was a lot faster this time because we weren't trying to be stealthy. The company was engagement. So what took us 3 hours previously took us 40 minutes. I mean, we were just
oh wow,
hauling
yeah.
butt up this mountain, and we attacked from a direction that the enemy forces didn't expect from. We won the battle. We turned around and went back down the mountain and reoccupied our road intersection, and the mission was ended. It was a end of exercise index. And so in the after action review, everybody was high-fiving each other and going over what was good, what was bad about the mission, the operation. And the lieutenant that was shadowing me pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, Lieutenant McNab, I just want you to know that I understand I'm getting an absolutely excellent and well-disciplined platoon. And I just wanted to thank you for the job that you have done to train this platoon and to get it to the level that it is. And I just want to know I'm getting a great platoon." I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He said, "Because the men were exhausted, and when you said the company needs us, we have to climb the mountain again, and you turned around and walked back up the mountain, nobody complained, everybody followed you, and it accomplished the mission." It was the most disciplined thing that I've seen. The privates could have been like, "Man, we just climbed this mountain." Everybody understood what the mission was, why it was important, and they all climbed that mountain again. And we were the only platoon that climbed it twice without any complaint. And I just wanted to let you know how disciplined that was. So, how does a leader get to that point? And so this is where you can tie this into business. How is it that I was able to influence my soldiers into being that disciplined and doing things? And it's because it's shared misery. Shared misery. I
Mm.
mean, it's so easy, for instance, to give a mission. Hey, today we're going to be cleaning up cigarette butts that people have thrown in this parking lot. And obviously, it's a very boring task to do. You're in the sun, you're picking up cigarette butts that somebody else threw on the ground. It's called a police call. You're just picking up trash. And the thing is, hey men, today we're picking up trash in this parking lot. Let's go. And to be the first person to pick up a piece of garbage and put it in your pocket, just sets the tone and the example. Hey, the lieutenant just didn't tell us to go do it. The lieutenant is picking up trash with us. And that's the same thing that you can apply to the business world. So I have my clinics. The bathrooms have to be cleaned. Nobody likes cleaning the bathrooms, but I get in there and I clean the bathrooms, as well. I mean, the wellness coordinators are tasked with it. But if there's a new customer, a new patient that's come in, it's resource management. Do I tell the wellness coordinator to stop taking care of the new customer and go clean the bathroom? Or since I'm there, should I jump in there and clean the bathroom? And so that's really what the leadership is all about, is being able to do self-sacrifice. Now, for that platoon, the when you're sleeping, you have a fire guard or watch, so that enemy doesn't sneak up on you and things like that. And my platoon sergeant always wanted to take care of me as an officer and said, "Officers, sir, you don't pull watch duty. You just get your sleep and everything." And I said, "Absolutely not. Not only am I going to pull watch duty, I'm going to pull it twice. I'm going to pull it at the beginning and take the first shift, and I'm going to take the last shift, because I want my platoon to fall asleep knowing that I'm standing guard over them and I am going to protect them while they're sleeping. And then the same thing, I want to be the first person they see in the morning standing watch, protecting them as they wake up. And so it's just one of those things of being a leader, and that can be attributed directly into performance in business. People are more than willing to have temporary discomfort if they know that their leaders are also sharing in the discomfort, and so that's something that's really important. Now, another thing is as an officer, one of the things that you do is you manage resources, but you also identify and mitigate risk. Okay, that's one of the things that you do, and that's as a small business owner. If you look at creating a business plan, and you go to the Small Business Administration, they have a great template, by the way. If you go to SBA.gov, they have a great template on how to do a business plan, and they have good walkthrough instructions. But one of the things that lenders are going to want to see is how you're mitigating any risks that come about to your business. And I had done a number of business plans, getting 7A loans through various Texas banks in order to expand my business. But here's something that was not in my bingo card was COVID-19.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think that the worldwide pandemic was on any business owner's bingo card for that year when you're looking at identifying and mitigating risk. That was just not, I just didn't even think about that. And
Right.
now everybody does think about it. What if we get shut down due to regulations and things like that? So one of the issues when COVID first started coming on board and we started to see a decline in revenue because people were getting stay-at-home orders and things like that, what is it that I need to do in order to make sure that my employees are paid, right? I have to take care of them. They're the customer, and my employees are the number one resource that I have. Because remember, in the Joint Chiropractic, we don't sell goods. We don't sell foam rollers or chiropractic, pain relief gel or supplements. We don't sell any of those stuff. So it's just the physical manual labor of the chiropractor doing a physical adjustment on our patients. And so the employees are critical. And chiropractors are a very specialized skill. Not only do they have to have a Bachelor of Science degree in a hard science, but they also go to 3 years of chiropractic school as well. So they're a skilled labor force. So in looking at what we were going to have to do, honestly, the very first thing to make payroll, I looked at mortgaging my house, putting a second mortgage on my house in
Wow.
order to make sure that I had the capital in order to pay my employees. And I'm very proud. I'm very proud that I was able to pay full salaries, including full bonuses, to my employees during the height of the pandemic. And you can just imagine the amount of loyalty that the chiropractors have and the front desk associates have for that, because I took care of them when people were getting laid off left and right. And so
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
so that's a military story, and also taking care. So the theme is taking care of people more than you take care of yourself, and it's cyclical. You'll get taken care of in the end.
Yeah, that's certainly very important. Um, I think the idea of leading by ex kind of like leading by example, right, is something that is critical to fostering an environment to where you have people that want to work with you and that are willing to work with you. I think just definitely very good advice for I guess people learning to go into business or in general in life. So yeah, yeah. Kind of on that note of advice though, do you have any like advice for young people in general or people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs or just lessons learned broadly that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was trying to figure out what it was I was going to do, I threw a lot of spaghetti against the wall. So I'm
Mm,
obviously
yeah.
I retired. Now, I had a huge advantage in that I was drawing a pension. I was retired from the Army. So I was drawing my pension, and so it allowed me to take a little bit more risk than somebody, say, who is just trying to start a business and they have no other source of income. So that allowed me to take a little bit of risk and to take me a little bit of time to dedicate to problem solving what type of business I was going to do. And it's interesting. There was a YouTube video, and I honestly I watched it. It's 10 years ago now. And I
Mm.
cannot find this YouTube video anymore. But it was, and when I watched it, it was like 2 years old at the time. But the theme of the business, or the theme of the video, was to be in business, you have to be in business. And I'll explain what that means, because
Yeah,
without
yeah,
the
yeah,
context of the video. So he said, for example, we're just going to say, I start a business and I'm making widgets, and I have my cost of goods. I have my making cold calls for customers to try and sell my widgets, and the widgets just aren't doing well. But I attend a trade show, and I see sprockets are doing really well. So I go back home, and I stop making widgets and I start making sprockets. And the sprockets keep me going. And then the sprockets start to peter off. And so I get this epiphany that I need to make cogs. Cogs are the future. And
yeah,
so I
yeah.
start making cogs, and my business starts going up again. So the this is the video that was like 20 minutes long. So the point is if you are making widgets and they are not working, if you quit, you're no longer in business. So you can't be in business because you've quit. The business is done. To be in business, you have to, or to be successful in business, you have to be in business. So you have to be able to be adaptable
Mm.
and look at market conditions and be able to pivot on what it is. If you see that you have an idea and it's a bad idea, following it off a cliff isn't going to do any good. You need to be
Yeah.
able to turn around at the last second and start going sideways along the cliff rather than jumping all the way off.
Right.
So being able to recognize market conditions in whatever field you're in, and that's why I said widgets, cogs, sprockets, these are all made up things, but whatever it is that you're doing, if you see that it is not going to work, you need to be able to be intelligent enough not to say that I'm not going to fall this all the way off the cliff and just run it right into the ground. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to do something. It was interesting. There was a Shark Tank episode, and I forget what the product was, but the individual was there in front of the sharks, and Mr. Wonderful was talking to him and said, "Look, I love your business. I don't think that you're qualified to be in this business. So what I want to do is I want to take 100% of your company, and I want you to be gone, but I will pay you royalties on this business for the rest of your life. Like basically, you're just going to have to just sit at home in your recliner, and mailbox money will come to your mailbox, and I'll send you checks every month. And but you're not qualified to run this business." And the person turned it down. And I was thinking about why would somebody turn down income for the rest of their life from this business? And I realized is because they culminated. It was their only idea. They had no other ideas, and they had nurtured this one idea, and they couldn't let it go. And there was nothing else left in the tank. There was no other ideas
Mm.
that they could have. And that's why they didn't want to let it go, because there was nothing else. If I give away this, then I don't have anything. I don't have any other ideas. And so that's where I would challenge young entrepreneurs is to have a multitude of ideas and be prepared to pivot if and when you need to. And the quicker that you can identify that problem and solve the problem and mitigate the risk of pivoting, I think will set a young entrepreneur up for success.
I see. So like this idea of kind of being more open-minded and adaptable to market trends and I guess just fluctuations in general. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess kind of, on that note, this is like a little bit I just thought of it, but like with the 21st century, there's a lot of emerging technologies. So do you perhaps have any comments on how that could impact I guess business or just our futures in general?
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the things I think that makes for an excellent entrepreneur is someone who is a voracious consumer of information, whether it be looking at the news, whether it be looking at various government reports that you can find, just by searching with AI, with Google to find information, looking at business journals, reading the Harvard Review, Business Review Journal, um, and have multiple sources. When people just like say in politics, when people only look at MSNBC as their sole source, they're going to get tunnel vision in just that source. Or
Right. Yeah.
if they only look in Fox News, then they're going to get tunnel vision. So for me, I not only do I read USA Today, Fox News, MSNBC, BBC. I look at all perspectives. Now, I think being well-rounded is hugely advantageous. And so the very first thing that I would say for these new technologies is to be well-versed in looking at what the future is going to hold, as well as how it's going to affect current market conditions. So, for example, I have a podcast, and I was a photography major, but everything was film. Like I was in a dark room. It wasn't
Mm.
digital editing like Photoshop.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hadn't been invented yet. And so I had, when I decided to do a podcast with my wife, I decided that I was going to need to figure out, either do I pay someone to do the video editing after shooting it, or do I do it myself? And so I want to say at least 200 hours of YouTube
Wow.
videos on how to do video editing, how to do the lighting, how to set up things to be successful. And my first video that I did with my wife, first podcast, was an hour long, and it took me 18 hours to edit. 18 hours
Wow. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I was learning how to do it. And with it being the first episode, there was no expectation of having repeat episodes come out.
Mm.
So I was on my own timeline. But now I can edit a video that's an hour long in like 20 minutes. But I didn't have that skill, so I learned that skill. And it's the same thing. I mean, using YouTube to learn skills is hugely valuable, and to see how other people are interacting with future technology. So AI is going to be huge. Obviously, it's huge now. It's going to be huge in the future, but you need to look at the second and third order effects of that business opportunity of AI.
Mm.
And that's something that, again, having that critical eye and being able to make predictive analysis of what's going to happen. AI is going to be huge. What powers AI? Energy. What type of energy is on the horizon? Well, just even today in USA Today, um, uh, Google is looking at nuclear power for their energy.
Right. Right.
Right. So solar farms and wind farms that are green energy, they don't generate enough. It's not going to be enough for AI. And using coal and natural gas is a logical way, but how do you have something that can just power these huge data farms in the support of AI? And so they're looking at these smaller nuclear reactors that are surrounded by salt, and they're solid fuel nuclear reactors. So it's not the big giant uh, inverted cone thing that has steam coming out of it. They're much smaller, and they're going to be
Mm.
localized. And so nuclear power can power these data farms. So if you're looking at a business opportunity, it's not just AI is the business opportunity, it's the second and third order effects of that business opportunity
Mm.
that you could get into. And so just following this logical model, you have AI, you have the physicalization of the data centers. So physical manufacturing and setting up data centers could be a job, and then powering those data centers with future technologies is the third order effect. So just the AI is not what the business opportunity is. There's all the second and third order effects that are going to support AI. And so I would challenge your listeners and young entrepreneurs to focus on the bigger picture rather than just the one item.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I guess when you're directly looking at technology, it's easy to, I guess, tunnel vision on that technology itself. But you need to be looking broadly. What does this implicate for, the industry, in general? So I guess, kind of to pivot, but so do you have any advice or like any thoughts on perhaps balancing short-term versus long-term goals or vision to be successful? Because I'm sure you've definitely had to do stuff like that, like instant payoff versus a long-term investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question because you can get lost in the forest just focusing on one tree, right? So you need to be
Right.
able to see the forest through the trees. And I'll give you a perfect example of what the Joint Chiropractic does. So we have a reoccurring membership model called the Wellness Plan. And whenever you look at what is the business model, and people say, "Oh, it's chiropractic care." That's not the business model. The business model is the reoccurring membership model. That's the business. And whatever product that you have for whether it's Netflix, whether it's Uber Eats, whether it is the Joint Chiropractic, whether it's Orange Theory, the business model is the reoccurring membership model. That's the business. And then whatever product you can put in there, is what supports the business. So for us, the reoccurring membership model is our wellness plan. And with it, it's a fixed price point. It varies in price throughout the United States. Currently here in Houston, it's $79 a month, and you get 4 chiropractic visits for that $75. Now, if you need $79, if you need additional visits, then there's an additional fee that's associated with that. Now, we run a special that is a prepayment. If you buy, we usually do this in the summertime and we do it in the wintertime as well. If you prepay for 10 months, we will give you 2 months free. So I'm taking a year's worth of revenue minus the 2 months that I'm giving away for free in my hand, short term, ready to go. Now, the drawback is now I don't have that reoccurring membership throughout the remainder of
Right.
the year. Because the patients have prepaid for it. And so in that, why would we do that? Well, we know through historical data that the summertime slows down a lot. A lot of times people go on vacation, and they come in and they want to freeze their membership. Hey, look, I'm going to Europe for 2 months. I don't want to pay while I'm not using it. So I want to put a freeze in my account and I'll unfreeze it when I come back from my vacation. Well, we have a slowdown. We just have this natural slowdown that we have data on that shows that the summer months we have fewer patients come in and utilize our services. So by front loading the money in December and having a big fat set of revenue, it carries me through the leaner times of the
Mm.
summer. Okay, so that's an example of how a business person, an entrepreneur, can look at leveraging their customers in order to make sure that through predictive analysis, you know that there's going to be a period of time that's slower than other periods of time, and what do I need to do to mitigate that loss? So for short-term, medium, and long-term goals, obviously as a business owner, you need to establish what your key performance indicators are. And I like to call them key KPIs. And so for the chiropractic industry in my business, it is the number of new patients that I have, my conversion rate of those new patients into reoccurring members, and then the attrition that I have for the current set of recurring members that I have that leave. And so managing the new patients and the attrition of old people and then converting the new patients into active members is a continuous short-term focus that we have. Now, the long-term goals is to have X amount of new patients in order to offset the attrition and to optimize my operations in the clinics to have a higher conversion rate and high patient satisfaction so that they do stay and that they get well. It is hugely important. So one of the things you also need to look at is growing the valuation of your business. So that would be the short term would be focusing on just those metrics in order to ensure profitability. But
Mm.
long term can be looking at your exit strategy, what it is that you're willing to do in order to sell your business at a profit and to be able to take that profit and either retire on it or to take that profit and start a new business. But those are the strategies. So you want to short term growth and profitability, midterm evolutions and success on the longevity of the business, and then long term is to have an exit strategy. Now you don't have to have it. You can say I'm going to pass this on to my children, and have a multi-generational business, but still being able to think about what the exit strategy is, and what the valuation of your business will help determine the directions that you want to go.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, like splitting it between, in the interim, short term, what do we need to accomplish versus broader, what is the big picture, I guess, for what we want to achieve. Yeah, definitely. That's very logical. Okay, so sort of to shift gears a little bit, to the policy making side of things. So, with the current administration's tariff policy, do you possibly have any thoughts or comments on what this could look like for business, or any impacts you've seen, or like maybe do you think like perhaps it's a more of a mixed bag?
Yeah, so again, yeah, I'm very impressed, Brian. You're asking great
Thank
questions,
you.
and I'm really enjoying this interview. So for the purpose of the tariffs, when you look at for the Joint Chiropractic, we don't sell goods, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So
therefore, I don't have a
yeah.
cost of goods, that's associated, and I don't have a need to pay for storage of goods, as well. So mine is purely service based. But again, when you look at second and third order effects, it's the patients that come in that are spending the money and becoming customers that's important. So, what is it that I need to do for them? How are they being affected by the tariffs, right? And consequently, then the next order of effect is I'm being affected because my patients are being affected,
Mm,
by potential tariffs. Now, when you look at some high level negotiations, this is honestly this is a negotiation strategy.
yeah.
I participated in a negotiation in um, Morocco in North Africa, when I was stationed in the U.S. Embassy there. There was a reoccurring exercise called African Lion, and it's with the Marine Corps. It's now with NATO, and with Moroccan forces. There's other. As I was the project officer in charge of African Lion, in 2013, there were a number of countries that were looking to get involved in that. Now, coinciding with African Lion, was an exercise called Majestic Eagle. And it was directly with the U.S. Air Force and the Moroccan Air Force. And so what they wanted to do was to have this. The Moroccans had just purchased F-16s. There's a system that interconnects fighter jets in the air called Link 16, and it allows the fighter jets to talk to each other via digital communications. Allows them to share information. It's really cool. Um, so Africa Command, Air Force Africa Command came down to do a negotiation with the Moroccan Air Force in order to see what type of exercise. And on the table there was um, a there are three courses of action that we were going to be talking about. The first one was the lowest one. It was a tabletop exercise, and it would involve no aircraft whatsoever. The pilots would come down, they'd be in a room, and they would war game, moving little using sticks and moving pieces around on like a board game like Risk or Axis and Allies,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, moving stuff around, and it would be notional aircraft and things like that. Now, obviously, that's good. It's good for planners to do, but it's not a technical exercise because you're not having fighter jets flying
Right.
around and
Yeah. Yeah.
interacting. So that was the lowest level. The medium level was a tabletop exercise with practice having aerial refuelers come down and do some type of practical application of refueling the fighter jets, with the tankers and things like that, and being able to have interoperability. Now, the final exercise was straight up. We're going to have a bunch of fighter jets flying in the air. We're all going to
Mm,
dogfight, and we're gonna not only we're going to do the aerial refueling, we're going to dogfight. We're going to plan operations, and we're going to turn on radar systems and dodge notional missiles being fired at us from these radar stations and things like that. So there was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force that was there. And when these planners came down from U.S. Air Force Africa Command, they came down, and there was a lieutenant colonel. He was Air Force. He was in the embassy as well, and he said, "Well, my recommendation was that." Or his recommendation is that we start with the tabletop game. We pitch the tabletop game first, And if they say yes, then we'll pitch, hey, okay, that's awesome, but we also can do this. And we pitch the medium one. And if they say yes, then we pitch the big one to them. And being a foreign area officer, I'm supposed to be the subject matter expert as pertains to the foreign militaries, the cultural aspect of what's going on, the background of the history and things like that. And I said, I was a major at the time. I said, I completely disagree. I completely disagree with that assessment. And I talked to the planners and the negotiators that had come down. I said, you need to start with the top one. And if they say no, then go to the middle one. If they say no to that, then go to the tabletop one. You need to start
Mm,
with what it is that you want first and then negotiate from there, right? You don't negotiate low and then try and get high, right? You have to
mm,
start what it is that you want, and then every negotiation is a compromise, and so not everybody gets what they want in a negotiation. So in this particular instance, the lieutenant colonel came to me and said, you embarrassed me by disagreeing with me, and I said, sir, my duty is to the United States of America. My duty is not to your feelings. And so, this is my professional advice. So we go to the negotiating table, and there's Moroccan generals, there's U.S. Forces on opposite sides. I got sent. I had a seat in the middle, but a lieutenant colonel that was a Marine bumped me and put me down to the end of the table. Whatever. So anyway, as we're doing the negotiations, they start with the top one, and the Moroccans agree. Yeah, let's do that one. And so
mm,
they got the win. But there were two Moroccan generals, and this kind of just fate, also is important. Two Moroccan generals that were on the end of the table were speaking and having a hushed conversation in French. And they said to each other, and I had gone to language school for Arabic and French, so I speak Arabic and French from being my time at the Defense Language Institute
mm,
for 2 years. And so I overheard their conversation, and they were concerned that the survey for the airfield that was going to be used was out of date. And so they said, we're not going to be able to do this exercise because the survey's out of date, and the pilots aren't going to be able to land because you have to have a qualified survey. Now, that might be I'm using simplistic terms because it's a dedicated Air Force term that I forget. But survey serves its purpose for the fact of this story. So anyway, the so I immediately said, you know, hey, gentlemen, to our side, the lead Air Force negotiators, I said, do we have the ability to send a team down in advance of this exercise to resurvey the airfield? And they said, yeah, we can do that. So luckily, by being sent down to the end of the end of the table, relegated to the boondocks down there,
mm.
I was able to overhear that conversation of the concern, and I was able to address the concern, and I was able to solve the problem in order to accomplish the overall objective, which was the high level dogfighting mission. And so, anyway, we got back to the embassy, and the Air Force negotiators were ecstatic, and they said that went exactly, Major McNab, how you said it was going to be. And I said, yeah, I mean, that's my job, is to be able to facilitate things like that.
Right.
So when you look at these tariff negotiations and how the Trump administration is doing this, they're starting at a high level. They're starting at the high level negotiation, and then the compromise starts to come down. And it's the same thing. You ask for everything that you want. You're not going to get everything you want, but you ask for everything that you want, and then you negotiate to a reasonable level. And we can see country after country is coming to, hey, I'm imposing 100%, 150% tariffs on you. And, they say, wow, that's like a lot. But then then they come to the negotiating table, and we start to get reasonable tariffs so that we're having, production and purchase of goods be reciprocal and have reciprocity as it pertains to us having access to their markets. So that's what I think the Trump administration is doing. Instead of starting low and ramping their way up after something's been agreed to, they're starting high and then compromising down. Now, I lucked out in the Majestic Eagle exercise. We started high and we got what we wanted at high.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so for this instance, we have countries that are already coming to the table because of the high level of tariff that's being imposed. And now it's being negotiated to reasonable levels. And both countries are winning as they're doing these individual deals.
I see. So it's more of almost like a bargaining chip in these
It's a
talks.
negotiating tactic.
Right.
It's a
Right.
negotiating tactic.
I see.
And so that's really what it is. And countries are coming to the table. They see, and the thing is, you have to be prepared to carry out the high level of tariff.
Yeah.
You can't say 150% and then it comes down to the wire and then you're like, just kidding,
Yeah. Yeah.
10% because you've lost credibility at that point in time. So, but in each of these instances, starting out at a high tariff, people have come to the negotiating table, and Trump is starting to ink a lot of deals with people. I mean, when Trump said, "Hey, look, I'm imposing this giant tariff on the European Union," immediately the European Union came to the bargaining table and they said, let's. And again, not everybody's not going to all get what they want, and it just never happens that way. So it's what people can stand. It's what's beneficial for both entities is usually what a good negotiation comes out to.
Hmm. I guess something I just thought of, but the other side of the tariffs, I guess, would be as like a way to. I mean, the goal is like to protect American industries, I guess. But I guess in terms of that, like, I guess how effective perhaps do you think that is? And like, what other? Because I've heard like other people float ideas like tax incentives for businesses to come back to the United States. Like, what else can we do to perhaps have businesses like reshore to the domestically?
Yeah, so that's interesting because Trump did that during his first administration. So major companies such as Google and Apple were and not just them, lots of other countries were refiling and moving, buying a business in say like Ireland, and they
Right.
were moving. They're sort of buying a business. Uh, let's just say it was a dog washing business. I'm making that up. All right. So anyway,
Yeah.
they buy a business that's already established, and then they change the business model to support managerial operations, right? And then they move the company from the company headquarters from the United States to Ireland, which has very positive tax rates for businesses. And they're now the international headquarters of company X is in Dublin, Ireland. And so now we're not going to pay taxes and we're going to keep all our money overseas. And what Trump did is like, hey, I'm going to lower the corporate tax so that you bring all that capital that you have overseas back to the United States. And companies like Apple and Google, they all did that. And Facebook, they all moved subsidiaries and international headquarters back to the United States and brought that capital with them because they knew that it wouldn't be taxed at such a high rate. So that was something that Trump did in his first administration, and it was genius. And as you look at what it is in bringing manufacturing back to the United States, as economies shift and they go from pure manufacturing to a goods and services style of manufacturing. So if you look at England has transitioned they have some manufacturing, they have some coal and things like that, but primarily they're a financial services and a services based economy. And the United States is also a service based economy. I think about 70% of our economy is service based. And so, but looking at what it is that we need to have job growth here in the United States and bringing manufacturing jobs back, it's important. I mean, one of the things that is super critical is semiconductors. And right now, the vast majority of the high-tech semiconductors are made in Taiwan. And Taiwan has decided to move manufacturing because of the tariffs. They decided to move some of their proprietary manufacturing processes here to the United States, and they're hiring U.S. workers in order to create these microchips and semiconductors. And so that's critical for our economy. I mean, we look at AI and how data hungry these are in making sure that from a strategic point of view that we have the chips and the components necessary to continue our forward progression in the AI space, we need to make sure that we have that strategic advantage of having things in the United States.
Right.
One of the biggest issues that I see is rare earths. Obviously, um, China has a huge uh,
Yeah, yeah.
resource of rare earth materials, and the United States and the rest of the world as well has to purchase those and bring them back to the country. Now, when you look at future of electric vehicles and lithium and things like that, we have recently now discovered lithium deposits that are huge in the United States, and we need to look at ways in order to tap into that. But by having any resource that's going to be required, that's a strategic resource, we need to try and bring jobs and the resources back to the United States in order to continue our forward trajectory.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I just recall, like, I'm not sure if this is for the tariffs, but I believe that I think TMSC, the semiconductor, the giant, was like planning opening a plant in Arizona in the United
Right.
States. So yeah, so these are things that bring critical industries to domestically. I think that's important. Okay, I guess for time's purpose, just to kind of finish things off with one last question.
Sure.
If so your, I guess, plans to become a policymaker, right, on Capitol Hill, but what now do you think you could tell the I guess Washington to help improve the small business environment?
Yeah. So small business runs the U.S. economy.
Right, yeah.
A lot of people think that it's Coca-Cola and IBM and Microsoft and Google and Apple that runs the economy. They're huge. They're obviously huge. But small business owners, Main Street business owners, is what drives the U.S. economy. And so to make sure that small business owners are you know, taxed less so that they can do reinvestments into their business. Whenever I receive a tax break, the money does not go into my pocket. The money goes into improving my business and improving the lives of my employees. It just doesn't go directly into my pocketbook. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that when you give a business a tax break, especially small business that's taxed as like an LLC or as an S corp. That's pass through income. It's pass through. So you're not. It's not that you have this giant C corp of a company and then that has individual employees. That pass through income, is taxed. And so, for instance, if I took a salary from my LLCs that my business has, I would have to pay payroll taxes on that salary, and then I would have to pay the pass-through income as well, and so I'd get taxed twice. And so you have to look at simplifying the tax code for small businesses so that you can have the ability to continue for that reinvestment, which is what the Trump administration wants. The Trump administration wants our economy to go off like a rocket ship and keep growing in order to sustain all the programs that we have and the tax cuts we have and things like that. But getting out of small businesses' way is hugely important, and even just in franchising alone, the value of franchising is that you are buying other people's mistakes and solutions for those mistakes. Like if you start
Mm,
your own business, you make a mistake, you have to eat that. You have to eat that
yeah.
mistake, and then you have to figure out and you learn. Obviously, pain is a wonderful teacher. So you learn about what to do. But being in a franchise model, the mistakes have already been made and the solutions to those mistakes have already been made, and so you're buying the solutions that have to the mistakes that have already been made is what's nice about buying a franchise. And at least that's the ideal. There's still a learning process for any business, but yeah, getting into franchising I think is huge and allows you to have a revenue stream to go and to do a passion project of yours. And if once you get to the level that you can hire a manager and general managers, you can shift your focus away into other businesses. Elon Musk is a perfect example of this by having Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink. Um, Grok with the XAI. And he's got multiple businesses, and he's able to spend time in each of those. And so that's an example of once you're successful in one business, you can now use your intellectual horsepower to go and to do passion projects as well.
Right.
One of the things that I uh, did when I was leaving the Army and retiring. The Army offers assistance to transition into civilian life. And at the time, the two major routes were to the go to college route to use your GI Bill or to get a job route. And so if you chose the college route, they would help you with your college essays. They'd help you, schedule SATs. They'd, help you with applications and how to utilize your GI Bill benefits to go to college. If you wanted to get a job, they helped you with resume writing, with interview skills, and things like that. As I was retiring in 2015, they added a third track. They added the entrepreneurial track. And I
Ooh,
signed up for the entrepreneurial track and did that. And one of the things that the instructor said that it's you're able to be passionate about any business that makes you money. if you if you
yeah,
if you think like, well, cleaning up messes, that's not my thing. Well, being a serve pro professional, a franchisee and getting in that business, that's cleaning up messes and it makes you money. And so
yeah.
you could be passionate about anything that makes you money. And so it's obviously nice to have a passion and go in a direction of something and follow through that. But you can have stair steps of doing a business, being successful at it, taking those lessons learned, and then doing your pet project. So that's what I would recommend to any young entrepreneur.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's certainly very great advice. Okay, so I know you're very busy, so I won't keep you here for too long. But I guess I very much appreciate all the insights you shared with me and the time you've taken to have this conversation, this interview. I think it'd be very great to have it on.